The hardwood canopy of Borneo's tropical rainforest towers 200 feet above the ground. These lush, steamy treetops are home to the orangutan, the only great ape indigenous to Asia. In the Malay language, orangutan means man of the forest. Ancient tribal legends maintain that the orangs were simply hairy people who chose to live in the trees. The forest people refused to talk, the stories say, in order to avoid being put to work. Orangutans once inhabited the forest canopies all across southern Asia, but today they are a seriously endangered species. Fewer than 30,000 wild orangutans may now exist, and the survivors all live in the shrinking jungles of Borneo and Sumatra. Borneo is the fifth largest island in the world, a little bigger than the state of Texas. It lies on the equator off the coast of mainland Southeast Asia. The northern section, Sabah and Sarawak, are part of Malaysia. Kalimantan, the southern two-thirds of the island, belongs to Indonesia. And it is here, in the remote Tanjung Puting National Forest, that Dr. Biruti Galdikas conducts the most comprehensive study of wild orangutans in the world. She teaches at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, but her real work is here.
I arrived here 14 years ago and established the Orangutan Research and Conservation Project. When I'm away in Canada and in the United States, Kalimantan becomes a dream. It's extremely nice to come back and find that my dream is still real, that my dream does have a reality. Of course, I think about my husband, whom I haven't seen for a long time. Pabohab hasn't yet seen Jane because Jane was born in Canada, and I know he's absolutely going to be thrilled.
Dr. Galdikas' long-awaited homecoming is a happy one. Her husband, Pabohab, is an Indonesian citizen. He originally worked for Dr. Galdikas as a skilled tracker of wild orangs. Now he maintains the camp while she is in Canada and assists her with research. Some orangs have become almost like members of the family and welcome Dr. Galdikas, Jane, and 4-year-old Frederick.
Brookie, say hello to Frederick. Frederick, say hello to Brookie.
Frederick has spent most of his young life playing not with other children, but with young orangutans. The remote outpost in Tanjung Puting is the headquarters of Dr. Galdikas' ongoing study of wild orangutans. But it also serves as a rehabilitation center for orphaned orangs brought here by the Indonesian government. About 30 orangutans and only a dozen people live in and around the 10-acre camp. The camp's unofficial mascot is Sapina, a young female who has lived here nearly her whole life. Dr. Galdikas reestablishes her close friendship with a young orang and prepares to resume her studies in the wild once again. Like Jane Goodall and the late Diane Fossey, Dr. Galdikas was encouraged to undertake her great ape research by the famous paleontologist Louis Leakey. Since the early 1970s, she has devoted her life to detailing the behavior of the shadowy, elusive, arboreal orangutan.
When I first came out here, my goal was to accumulate life histories for wild orangutans. To follow wild orangutans from birth to death, through all the different life stages: infancy, sexual maturity, the first offspring, subsequent offspring, and then finally death. Fourteen years ago, it was extremely difficult for me to find wild orangutans. Sometimes I would have to search for up to 10 days. Now we have a much more extensive trail system. We have over 150 kilometers worth of trails cut in the study area. Now I have my husband, Pa Bohab. He is an unusually skilled orangutan locator. So usually he finds an orangutan in 1 or 2 days. When I started becoming interested in orangutans, I was convinced that they were closer to humankind than the other great apes. But in reality, this is not so. Orangutans are humankind's third closest living relatives in the animal kingdom, after chimpanzees and after gorillas. But still, there is something very human about them. And the other thing that interested me is the fact that orangutans are the only great ape that has not left the tropical rainforest. So the orangutans are still living in exactly the same habitat in which the common human great ape ancestor evolved. So my feeling was that if we wanted to understand human evolution, we had to understand the one great ape that was still living in the tropical rainforest.
But the tropical rainforest itself is being bulldozed away to create settlements and farmland for Indonesia's burgeoning human population. As civilization destroys the jungle, it creates chaos for the creatures that once lived here. Their habitat is steadily disappearing. And in the process, young orangs are often separated from their mothers, orphaned, and then captured. Local trade in these animals was once very active. A young orang like this one could bring $50,000 on the black market. Now orangutans are protected by international law. And because of Dr. Galdikas' work with the wild orangs, this young orphan and others like it will be given another chance to live an almost normal life. It will be sent to the rehabilitation center at Tanjung Puting. Orphaned and captive animals come by boat from all over Kalimantan. They will be raised by Dr. Galdikas, her staff, and family in a kind of limbo, no longer captive, but not truly wild.
The reason that I started doing this work was to guarantee the safety of the wild orangutan population that I was studying. It was very clear that as long as there was a wild orangutan trade in the general vicinity of the national park, perhaps even the animals in our study area would be threatened. So we had to do something to stop the trade. As it turned out, the Indonesian Forestry Department were very interested in having somebody set up an orangutan rehabilitation station. The PPA officials confiscate orangutans either from logging companies or from private individuals who don't have permission to keep the orangutans. And usually after confiscation, they bring them to me, and my responsibility is to rehabilitate it and then eventually relocate it. It has been clear for a number of years that the habitat around camp, the forest around camp, simply could not harbor more ex-captive orangutans. But what could we do? If we were given confiscated orangutans by the forestry, we obviously had to accept them. But it's they who make the decisions concerning these matters, not us.
The arrival of each new orang adds to Dr. Galdikas' complicated task and takes away time and resources from her studies in the wild. Adopting a baby orangutan, like adopting a human child, involves great responsibility. Like all young primates, including human children, orangutans are born without the abilities or ingrained instincts that allow them to survive in their own environment. In the wild, orangutan babies spend 5 to 6 years with their mothers, learning the complicated skills necessary to climb trees, gather food, and interact with their own kind. In the beginning, Dr. Galdikas herself tried to be a substitute for the orangutan mother.
I only hand-raised a few. I only hand-raised maybe 4 or 5. Now we have a different system. Now we try to get the adolescent and sub-adult males to adopt new infants that come in. It's a sensible idea because obviously we humans are not as good a role model for infant orangutans as other orangutans are. They have to learn from each other because they learn the wrong things from us.
A suitable foster parent must be found or this baby will die. Sometimes adult females will readily adopt new orphans, but they may reject a newcomer, sometimes forcibly.
Not working, April. Not working, April. We're going to have to try somebody else. April?
Fortunately, a young adult male adopts the little orphan, and he even lets the baby suckle at his breast. There may not be milk, but there is comfort, warmth, and security in his embrace. In the wild, such a relationship would never exist. The only close social bond is between mothers and their dependent offspring. But here, nurturing and survival matter more than anything else. And this foster parent bond ensures that the little orphan will be properly educated and protected from predators like fierce wild boars that prey upon careless young orangutans. The camp itself is not enclosed, and sometimes its relatively peaceful life is disrupted by a wild adult male who comes in from the deep jungle attracted by females in camp. The inexperienced young males at Tanjung Puting can find themselves threatened by the excitable interloper. In the wild, when two males meet, there is a show of strength and a standoff. It is normal behavior for a wild orang, but these ex-captives don't quite know how to respond. Safety can sometimes be found out on a limb. The male's large cheek callosities enlarge the size of the face and may aid in attracting choice females and in dominance displays over other males. Full-grown male orangutans can weigh as much as 175 pounds and have an 8-foot arm span. Adult males live primarily solitary lives and only infrequently find companionship with a receptive female for a few days at a time. Wild adult females are only about half the size of the males, and they are almost never alone. For most of their lives, they have a young baby with them, and they resist mating while caring for an infant. Occasionally, young adult males and females will copulate, but this rarely produces offspring and seems to be more for practice than procreation. After a successful mating, the gestation period is about 7.5 months. Female orangutans nurse their young for around 2 years and aid in the transition to solid food by pre-chewing for their young. A baby orangutan will cling inseparably to its mother for 12 months, clutching onto her long hair, demanding undivided attention. Young orangs stay with their mothers for 5 to 6 years, then are forcibly rejected. Females only raise one baby at a time. Obviously, a second infant would be nearly impossible for this arboreal primate to handle. In effect, the orangutans at Tanjung Puting only reproduce one infant every 7 years. Orangutans in the wild eat fruits, flowers, insects, the inner bark off of trees, and the succulent pith of moisture-laden branches and leaves. Of the average 11.5 hours they spend every day browsing for different sorts of food, a solid 4.5 hours may be spent eating. Part of the ongoing study at Tanjung Puting National Park focuses on the precise eating habits of the wild orangutans. Trees in which they have been feeding are marked with coded tags. Entries in logbooks can then refer to specific trees and animals. Orangutan droppings are collected, and the seeds found within them are planted to see what sort of plants grow. Dr. Galdikas sometimes finds her gardening skills an important tool for increasing her knowledge about the diversity and range of the wild orang and its feeding habits. Meanwhile, Sapina gets a free drink. Life for humans at the camp is simple, unhurried. Dinner usually consists of rice and vegetables with an occasional fish. Dr. Galdikas allows these short, hairy guests at the table as long as they mind their manners. She considers some of the orphaned orangutans part of her family. They are somewhere between being wild animals and pets.
Freddie's got the idea. Hold the door open for her.
4-year-old Frederick has no human playmates his own age. His friends are the orangutans. And both young animals display behavior distinctly learned from the other species. As with all children, there is some give and take. Sometimes Frederick's human wiliness gives him an unfair advantage. Other times, the orangutan's strength wins out. Either way, the result is reminiscent of children playing anywhere. But very soon, this young animal will be too strong to play safely with Frederick any longer.
No.
Orangutans learn by imitating, though with humans as examples, what they learn may be quite inappropriate to life as an orang. Nevertheless, their ability to learn new tasks quickly demonstrates their high intelligence. The infant orangutan clings to her mother throughout the entire lengthy operation. Orangutans that live in camp have no need to forage to survive because they are completely fed and cared for by humans. they end up with plenty of time on their hands. And a bored orangutan very quickly becomes a nuisance, a very destructive nuisance. Dr. Galdikas's permits to study the wild orangutans of Tanjung Puting National Park are supplied on an annual basis, and one of the conditions for continued issuance is that she accept all the confiscated orangutans brought to her by the Indonesian government. With the resultant overpopulation of ex-captive orangs, camp life is a continual round of destruction and repair. This and the loss of her valuable study time is the price she must pay to continue her work on the wild animals. With 30 curious and powerful orangutans trying to get into anything and everything, even the roof has to be nailed down. But it is a sort of interspecies extended family, and the evenings are often peaceful and quiet. Each night, orangutans build new nests of woven branches and leaves and sleep high off the ground. Dr. Galdikas takes advantage of the tranquil solitude to make her journal entries and update her records. Over the last 14 years, she has logged in 30,000 hours of observation, a massive amount of scientific data that needs to be analyzed before her work can be published. The blazing equatorial sun rises over the dew-soaked forest, and soon afterwards the air is full of steam. The orangutans awaken at the first light, but this is the tropics where nothing seems to move very quickly. All the orangutans, wild and ex-captive, begin their day slowly, lying in bed for an hour or two after sunrise. The ex-captive orangutans are fed twice a day near the camp. The early morning feeding always brings them down from the trees. The call, makan, makan, eat, eat, from the fruit wagon draws them to the feast of bananas, sweet potatoes, and pineapples.
Claudia, Gara, makan. Makan, makan. Ayo, seswe.
Huge amounts of fruit and vegetables have to be shipped up the river by boat to feed the hungry crowd.
Bola. Makan, makan. Ayo. Supinang. Makan, supinang.
We feed them essentially what they want, so they don't go out and destroy the forest and destroy the habitat of the wild orangutans in this area. Some people would say that perhaps this would be contrary to the goals of rehabilitation, but I don't think so. Our primary concern is the wild orangutans who are still left in their natural state. These ex-captives, much as we like them and value them, are secondary. The current state of affairs in Tanjung Puting is that we have approximately 30 ex-captive orangutans, or their offspring around camp. And the problem is that we simply don't have enough habitat for them. The ex-captive orangutans are very destructive if they are concentrated in a small area as they are around camp. The reason that they are destructive is because they gather to wait for the food to be brought to them, and while they are waiting, they are eating the bark off many of the trees and the leaves off many of the trees, and gradually over months and years they totally destroy the bark, and then the trees die. The wild orangutans normally make a new nest every night, and so the ex-captives try to make a new nest every night. And so the amount of nest building that there is in the vicinity of camp is just absolutely incredible. You can count 100 nests in the vicinity of camp. So between bark eating, nest building, making covers for themselves during rainstorms, dropping of branches, throwing of branches, playing, you can see what the forest around camp looks like. If it were a primary forest, it could handle it better. But even the primary forest across the river, at least 10 mature trees were killed by the orangutans.
There is an urgent and growing need to relocate these unruly ex-captives in the wild, far from the study site.
Our hope is to take many of the ex-captives from Tanjung Puting and do one of two things with them. Some of them we are going to disperse around the national park. Our second alternative is to take the ex-captives here and transport them as a group, as a community, to a nature reserve in South Borneo where orangutans have been extinct for over 100 years.
The relocation of the ex-captives will fulfill Dr. Galdikas's pledge to rehabilitate and release the animals, and it will free her to concentrate more fully on her study of the wild orangutans, high in the rainforest canopy. This man, Dr. Donald Perry, has developed a surprising tool that will enable Dr. Galdikas to observe the orangutan's treetop home from a radically new perspective. Dr. Perry is a tropical rainforest biologist from UCLA. He specializes in studying life in the rainforest canopy. He has managed to leave the soggy forest floor and climb to the tops of the tallest trees, where he has found one of the world's richest ecosystems. He is pioneering a striking method of reaching his field of interest.
Initially, I devised a very simple tree climbing method for gaining access to trees which could reach heights up to 200 feet. Their first limbs might be 100 feet above the ground.
Using a crossbow, he launches an arrow tied to a fishing line high over a branch. He then attaches climbing rope to the line and soon has access to a place that until now has been inaccessible to humans. Mechanical ascenders make it possible for people to use the strength of their legs to climb as much as 100 feet above the ground.
Scientists haven't been here up in the treetops looking at orangutans before, and I believe that a lot can be learned from this position and this perspective. The orangutan is the largest arboreal mammal, and they do reach a weight equal to that of a human being. I find it incredible that orangutans are able to survive in the habitat with the great weight that they have. they can easily break small limbs, and as you watch them move through the trees, you see that they're very careful about how they move. They'll be holding a tree or a vine, and before they transfer their weight, they've tested the next position. They grip branches, they swing trees off center. Often you'll hear the trees crashing to the ground, limbs falling, and this is just, in some cases, just from locomotion. They have to be very careful or they're doomed. They will fall. Spending long periods in the canopy has caused me to wonder about ourselves and our evolutionary past. What kind of animal were we before we left the trees? The fact that the canopy has been a factory which has sculpted the shape of these animals. And this shape, of course, is the similar shape to our own. There are a number of features which are strictly due to an arboreal heritage. Forward-facing eyes, grasping hands, and an enlarged brain. So to come to Borneo and look at orangutans is an exploration in part of what our ancestors may have been like.
Dr. Perry has done most of his work studying the trees in the canopy of the Central American rainforests. This is his first introduction to orangutans and their particular sort of welcome. He was surprised when one stole his canteen, and even more surprised with what happened then.
So in order to climb the rope, you put an ascender on the upper up here, and you connect that to the harness. So let's do that.
Perry introduces Dr. Galdicas to his novel method.
So you can see here, when you pull down, it won't slide down the rope, and you can easily slip it up. So this one, combined with the lower ascender, will allow you to climb the rope in an inchworm kind of fashion. I think if you put your hand in here, you'll be better off. Yeah, and push up from there. Ooh, gee, that was the longest one you've done. Okay. I'm pretty satisfied with how you're doing this. Yeah, that was good. I am very confident that we can get you up to a nest real soon. Maybe tomorrow.
I was thinking, like, maybe next year.
Dr. Galdicas learns this new skill quickly and soon finds herself with a new point of view.
You see how the orangutan must have taken off little tiny twigs and lined the nest on one side?
Is it symmetrical?
Oh, yeah. See, over there. Very symmetrical, like almost like a pillow. Sapina, I thought we were friends. Remember all the goodies I've given you?
The canopy of the rainforest is now accessible to Dr. Galdicas. She can observe the orangutan in its real home. It is almost like discovering a new world. But as the forest canopy comes within reach of human eyes, the steamy treetop home of the wild orangs is fast disappearing from the face of the earth. 500 miles north of Kalimantan, the rainforest of northern Borneo in Malaysia is being cut and bulldozed at a numbing pace. Vast expanses of timber are sold off, the meager red earth bared for agriculture. Farmers spread fertilizer to increase the production of food for the ever-expanding human population. And the population of wild orangs is placed in increasing jeopardy. As in Kalimantan, the destruction of the habitat sometimes leaves orphaned orangutans. Though it is illegal to own one here as in Indonesia, villagers will sometimes keep a young animal as a pet. Officials of the Sabah Forest Service act quickly when they hear of an illegal orang and arrive to confiscate the young animal. Captive orangutans are often found suffering from neglect, malnutrition, and physical abuse. Fortunately, this one is in good condition. The captive orangs are brought here to the Sepilok Rehabilitation Center, run by the Malaysian government. Some animals are confiscated from illegal owners. Some are injured by logging operations. Others are removed from cocoa estates for being destructive to crops. All the new arrivals are given a complete physical exam and thoroughly checked for injury and disease by the veterinary staff. Then the ex-captives are placed in a 2-week quarantine to ensure that no diseases are transmitted to the other animals at the center. Sepilok's medical facility provides complete care. This animal arrived with a head injury. Under anesthetics and tranquilizing drugs, the wound can be sutured to facilitate healing. X-rays reveal bones broken in falls of up to 100 feet. As many as 35% of all orangs have been found to have severe bone fractures at some time during their lives. Orangutans survive accidents that would shatter a human skeleton because of large shock-absorbing pads of cartilage in their joints. Their bones ossify later in life than a human's and retain more resiliency for a longer time. In captivity, fractures heal, sometimes aided by pins and plates, in as little as 14 days. The rehabilitation center at Sepilok is strikingly different from Dr. Galdikas's facility in Kalimantan, and the methods used at the two centers are as different as their appearance. Sepilok cares primarily for very young orangutans and releases them into the wild as soon as possible. There are no adults to act as protectors and role models, and the young apes are kept in cages. Every day, however, they are loaded into the local version of a school bus and taken out to their jungle classroom. The Sepilok philosophy and approach encourages the young animals to learn orangutan skills by trial and error, on their own, in a protected situation in the rainforest. These young orangs cling to each other in a way they would never do in the wild. Without their mothers, they have a need for warmth and contact that only their fellow orphans can provide. All of these juveniles have been in captivity since they were very young, so before coming to Sepilok, they had little or no experience in the wild. Searching for food, developing climbing skills, and surviving in the rainforest take a great deal of knowledge, usually learned over the period of years a young orangutan spends with its mother. These orphans have a lot of catching up to do, and they can only do it in the jungle. Watching their incredible feats of agility and strength in the trees, it is somewhat difficult to accept that their muscles are not much different from our own. They owe their prowess in the forest to their long, powerful arms, huge grasping hands, and a lifetime of conditioning. After a hard morning's work, the young orangs rest for an hour or two. But a rainstorm brings the siesta to an early end. Rain comes most days to the forests of Borneo. Though orangutans don't generally care to be wet, they do take advantage of the easily accessible drinking water. And the water can be a source of great amusement as well. This one has located his own private pool. Finally, it's time to pull the plug. Occasionally, the ex-captive's daily routine is broken by the excited voices of other students. School children from nearby Sendakan are sometimes brought to Sepilok to visit the orangutans. The human children get a first-hand look at their distant cousins and learn about the problems facing the endangered primates. These children, when they have grown, may very well be the people who make important decisions about the fate of all remaining wild orangutans.
Air terjun dari atas. Yang satu dibawa si Fuji. Fuji. Bye-bye.
Later in the afternoon, it's feeding time. In contrast to Dr. Galdikas's practice, these young orangutans are fed only minimal amounts. And they're fed in the jungle where natural food is also available. This reinforces their own food-gathering skills. Unlike the rather rich and delicious diet served the ex-captives in Kalimantan, the Sepilok orangs are fed a monotonous diet of milk and bananas, so that they will look for more varied foods in the trees. When fruit in the forest is abundant, the human-supplied rations are cut back so that the animals are pushed to learn to depend on food they gather themselves. Once the food has brought them down from the trees and the day is coming to an end, it's time to get all the orangs back into the bus to head for home. A task which sounds much easier than it is. It takes great patience, but the bus is finally loaded. Back at the center, the young orangutans are put in their cages. This is largely for their own protection, as they may not yet be able to recognize and deal with danger in the wild. At one time, the cages were much more open and accessible. But one tragic night, this 18-foot python crawled through the widely spaced bars and swallowed 2 young orangutans. The snake was captured because its meal had made it too big to get back out through the bars. It is now kept confined to prevent a recurrence. Here the orangutans are safe and dry, burlap bags providing cozy nesting material for their night's sleep. When the officials at Sepilok determine that an orangutan has learned enough about the jungle to survive, they release it, usually 3 to 5 years after its arrival at Sepilok. This isn't a simple matter of just opening the cage door and letting the animal go. Sepilok has released over 100 rehabilitated orangutans to the forest, but there is no way of knowing what their survival rate is. The released orangutans range through the deep forest where they cannot be tracked. Some undoubtedly die, others may be killed or captured, but some do thrive. Released orangutans have returned to the center. A couple of them were females carrying the young offspring of wild orangutans. Today is a special day. This young orangutan is led about a mile into the forest, far enough from the center to be truly in the wild. There, a safe platform has been constructed. It is a sad time for both the humans and the orangutan. They have known one another for several years, and doubtless the orangutan can sense that something is different about today. The graduating student is fed milk and bananas and encouraged to take to the trees. The men will return to bring food to the platform every day, but the orangutan can easily get better food in the forest. It will return for the bananas and milk for a while, perhaps for the company of the humans as well, but less and less often. Finally, it will not bother to return at all. It will have learned to be self-sufficient. The hope is that it will live out the rest of its normal lifespan, 30 years or more, in its wild new home. The plight of the wild orangutan has become a familiar refrain, but nonetheless poignant. As the human population of Borneo grows, our cousins in the trees may run out of places to live. The governments of Malaysia and Indonesia are setting aside preserves as untouchable wilderness habitats. But those who know the orangutans well, like Dr. Biruti Galdikas, worry that it might be too little, too late.
The real situation is that even though there may be as many as 20 or 30,000 wild orangutans left in Borneo, orangutan habitat is disappearing very, very quickly. 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, there were far more orangutans than there are now, and there was far more tropical rainforest habitat. By the end of the 20th century, the only place where wild orangutans can live, unhampered, will be places like Tanjung Puting National Park. So by the end of the century, I suspect that there really will be only 4,000 or 5,000 orangutans left in Borneo, and only in protected areas. And once you get down to figures as low as 4,000 wild orangutans scattered over an area the size of Borneo, then you are dealing with a population that is decidedly on the edge of extinction.
If the orangutans disappear, a precious link to our own past will also vanish, just as we are truly making contact.